They called it family privacy, but I had no idea what they were really hiding until I saw my bank account balance drop from $47,000 to $300 overnight. I'm Rebecca, and this is the true story of how my in-laws taught me the real meaning of family betrayal. Picture this: Sunday dinner at the Martinez house, the kind of scene you'd see in a magazine. Patricia, my mother-in-law, arranging fresh flowers while discussing her latest medical conference. James, my brother-in-law, the lawyer, talking about his recent courtroom victory. And there I was, the dutiful daughter-in-law, setting the table with the good china that Patricia insisted we use every week. "Rebecca, dear," Patricia said, not looking up from her flower arrangement, "you understand the importance of family privacy, don't you?" Her voice carried that tone she used when discussing serious matters at the hospital. Professional, measured, leaving no room for questions. I nodded, placing the last fork in its proper position. "Of course, Patricia. Family matters stay within the family." I thought I was agreeing to something simple, something normal. Every family has private conversations, right? Every family has boundaries about what gets shared with outsiders. David smiled at me from across the room, that warm smile that made me fall in love with him 3 years ago. His family had welcomed me with open arms when we got married. Well, at least that's what I believed. Patricia always complimented my cooking. James included me in his legal anecdotes, and David's father, Robert, treated me like the daughter he never had. But that night, as I stood in their pristine kitchen washing dishes while the family retreated to Robert's study for their quick business chat, something felt different. The way Patricia had emphasized privacy, the way David had avoided my eyes when she said it, the way James had cleared his throat and suddenly found his wine glass fascinating. I dried my hands on the embroidered towel. Patricia insisted on cloth, never paper, and tried to shake off the unease creeping up my spine. This was my family now. These were the people who'd stood beside me at my wedding, who called me every week to check in, who included me in every holiday tradition. I thought that was just normal family conversation until I discovered what they really meant by privacy. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing the cracks in our perfect family picture. David, who used to share everything with me, began taking phone calls in the garage. When I'd walk into a room, conversations would stop mid-sentence. Patricia would change the subject so smoothly it took me days to realize she was doing it intentionally. "Hey, babe," I said one evening, finding David in our bedroom with his phone pressed to his ear. "Who was that?" He ended the call quickly, too quickly. "Just family stuff, Becca. Nothing you need to worry about." He kissed my forehead, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "You know how it is with family business." Family business. That phrase started popping up everywhere. James would excuse himself from conversations with family business calls. Patricia would rush me out of rooms because she had family business to discuss with David. Even Robert, usually so chatty about his golf games and retirement plans, would clam up whenever I entered his study. I know you felt this way too. Like you're standing on the outside of your own life, watching everyone else share secrets you're not allowed to know. It's that sinking feeling when you realize the people closest to you are keeping you in the dark, treating you like a stranger in your own home. The Wednesday evening family meeting started without explanation. David would kiss me goodbye, saying he'd be back in a couple hours and drive to his parents' house for these mysterious gatherings. When I asked if I should come along, Patricia would smile that practiced smile and say, "Oh, darling, this is just boring financial planning. You'd be so bored." But I could see David's jaw tighten every time she said it. I could see the way James would look anywhere but at me when the meetings were mentioned. And I definitely noticed how these boring financial planning sessions always left David stressed and distracted for days afterward. "Is everything okay with the family?" I asked David one night as he stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. "You seem worried about something." He turned toward me, and for a moment I thought he might tell me the truth. His mouth opened, then closed. Then he pulled me closer and whispered, "Everything's fine, Becca. Don't worry about it. Some things are just complicated in families like mine." families like his. As if I wasn't part of that family. As if 3 years of marriage, 3 years of Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations and birthday parties meant nothing. As if I was still just David's girlfriend, someone temporary who didn't deserve to know the real family business. But I didn't know they were planning something that would change everything behind my back. The morning I discovered what family privacy really meant started like any other Tuesday. I had planned to surprise David with dinner reservations at the Italian place where we had our first date. It was our anniversary in 2 days, and I wanted to do something special. I drove to the bank to withdraw some cash for the romantic evening I had planned. I still remember the feeling of standing at that ATM, entering my PIN with a smile on my face, thinking about David's surprise when I told him about the reservation. I pressed the balance inquiry button, expecting to see our usual $47,000 sitting safely in our joint account. Money we'd been saving for a house down payment, money from my promotion last year, money from both our careful budgeting and planning for our future together. The screen showed $347.82. I stared at those numbers, convinced the machine was malfunctioning. I pressed the button again. Same result. My hand started shaking as I requested a receipt, the paper feeling impossibly light as it printed out our financial devastation in neat, automated lines. 3 withdrawals in the past week, $15,000 on Monday, $18,000 on Wednesday, $14,000 on Friday, all authorized by David's signature, all done while I was at work, completely unaware that our future was being dismantled, transaction by transaction. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot staring at that receipt until the numbers blurred through my tears. My phone felt like it weighed 100 pounds as I dialed the bank's customer service line. Mrs. Martinez. Yes, I can confirm those transactions. Your husband provided the proper authorization for each withdrawal. The funds were transferred to... The customer service representative's voice faded into background noise as my world collapsed around me. David had cleaned out our account. The money we'd saved together, the money I'd contributed from 60-hour work weeks and skipped vacations and careful meal planning, gone. Transferred to accounts I'd never heard of, for reasons no one had bothered to explain to me. And that's when I realized what family privacy really meant. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing through every conversation, every mysterious family meeting, every time David had avoided my questions about what was wrong. The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture I didn't want to see. David was already home when I walked through our front door, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open and papers scattered around him. He looked up when I entered, and I saw guilt flash across his face before he could hide it. "Hey, babe, you're home early," he said, closing the laptop too quickly. "Everything okay?" I placed the bank receipt on the table between us, watching his face drain of color as he recognized what it was. "I was going to ask you the same thing, David. Where's our money?" The silence stretched between us like a chasm. David picked up the receipt, his hands trembling slightly as he read numbers he already knew by heart. When he looked up at me, I saw a stranger wearing my husband's face. "Becca, I can explain," he started, but his voice lacked conviction. "There was a family emergency. Mom needed help with some investments and $47,000 worth of help?" My voice cracked on the numbers. "Our house money, David, our future. And you gave it away without even telling me?" He stood up, reaching for me, but I stepped back. The man I'd married, the man I'd trusted with everything, had betrayed that trust so completely I couldn't even process it. "It's temporary, I promise. She's going to pay it back with interest. It's a good investment opportunity and..." "Stop." I held up my hand, and something in my tone made him freeze. "Just stop lying to me. This is what the family meetings were about, isn't it? This is what family privacy means. You've all been planning how to spend my money without asking me. Everyone fears the moment when the person they trust most reveals themselves to be someone completely different. That moment when you realize the life you thought you were building was built on lies, and the people you considered family were just wearing masks until they got what they wanted from you. David's shoulders sagged as the weight of his deception became too heavy to carry. Becca, please understand. Mom's in a difficult situation. James has some financial problems, and if we don't help now, the whole family could lose everything. I was going to tell you, but I knew you'd worry, and I'd worry? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. About our money being stolen? Yes, David, I would worry about that. I picked up the receipt, crumpling it in my fist. How long has this been planned? How long have you all been sitting around that dinner table, eating the meals I cook, planning how to rob me blind? But what I discovered next was 10 times worse than I ever imagined. That evening, while David took a shower, probably trying to wash off the guilt, I did something I'd never done in 3 years of marriage. I opened his laptop. I knew his password. We'd never had secrets before. Or so I thought. His email was open to a group conversation titled Martinez Family Business. My heart pounded as I scrolled through weeks of messages I was never meant to see. Patricia, Rebecca doesn't need to know the details of our situation. She'll just worry unnecessarily. James, she'd probably say no anyway. You know how she is about money. Robert, David, you need to handle this delicately. We can't afford to have her asking questions. David, I know, I'll take care of it. She trusts me completely. Message after message, planning my financial betrayal with the cold efficiency of a corporate board meeting. They discussed exactly how much they could take without me noticing immediately. They debated the best timing to avoid my paycheck deposits. They planned their story about Patricia's investment opportunity, like directors crafting a movie script. But the worst part wasn't the planning. The worst part was reading their casual dismissal of me as a person worthy of basic respect. James referred to me as David's wife throughout the entire conversation, as if I didn't have a name. Patricia discussed my emotional reactions, like I was a problem to be managed rather than a family member to be consulted. And David, my David, the man who promised to love and honor me, who spoke at our wedding about partnership and trust, had written, "She won't suspect anything. Rebecca's too trusting to question family decisions." I scrolled further back, discovering this wasn't their first family financial emergency. David's ex-girlfriend, Sarah, had apparently been asked to loan money for James's law school debts. When she refused, the family had systematically frozen her out until David broke up with her. The previous girlfriend, Amanda, had actually given them money, $12,000 for Robert's medical bills that turned out to be casino debts. There was a pattern here, a systematic approach to finding financially stable women and draining them dry before moving on to the next victim. I was just the latest mark in a long-running family con game. I found James's banking information in the email chain, including recent statements showing exactly where our money had gone. Not to Patricia's investment opportunity, not to family medical bills, to online gambling sites, to debt consolidation payments, to covering the shortfall from James's trust fund that he'd already blown through on sports betting and poker games. My husband's family hadn't just stolen my money. They'd recruited my own husband to help them do it, and they'd done it before. I was married into a family of con artists, and I'd been their perfect mark, trusting, generous, desperate to belong. As I sat there in our bedroom reading the evidence of their betrayal on David's own computer, I realized something that changed everything. They thought I was weak. They thought I was stupid. They thought I'd just accept this theft and move on, grateful to still be included in their perfect family portrait. They had no idea who they were really dealing with, and they were about to find out. But they had no idea I was about to turn their own game against them, and what I did next would destroy everything they thought they knew about controlling me. The next morning, I called in sick to work. For the first time in my 3-year marriage, I had a secret mission that David couldn't know about. While he left for his job, kissing my forehead and asking if I needed anything for my headache, I was already planning the legal destruction of his entire family's criminal enterprise. My first stop was downtown to meet with Sarah Chen, the attorney I'd researched online at 2 a.m. She specialized in financial fraud cases, and her reviews mentioned she was particularly effective against family financial abuse, a term I'd never heard before, but now understood perfectly. "Mrs. Martinez," Sarah said as I sat across from her polished desk, "what you're describing isn't just betrayal, it's systematic financial fraud. Your husband forged documents to access marital assets without your consent. That's a felony." I handed her the printed emails, bank statements, and the detailed timeline I'd compiled through my sleepless night of investigation. "I want them prosecuted to the full extent of the law, all of them." Sarah's eyebrows rose as she read through the evidence. "This is incredibly thorough documentation. How long have you been gathering this?" "Since last night," I said, and her surprise was visible. "I'm a project manager, Ms. Chen. When I find a problem, I document every detail until I understand the full scope." She leaned back in her chair, studying me with new respect. "Rebecca, I have to ask, are you prepared for what happens next? This will destroy your marriage. It will tear apart David's family. There's no going back once we file these charges." "They tore apart my marriage when they decided to rob me," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "They destroyed their own family when they chose crime over honesty. I'm just making sure they face the consequences." Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen in weeks. "Then let's make sure justice is served. First, we need to freeze their assets before they can move more money around." While Sarah filed for an emergency asset freeze, I drove across town to meet Amanda Rodriguez, David's ex-girlfriend from 4 years ago. I'd found her contact information in David's old emails and reached out that morning, explaining who I was and what I'd discovered. We met at a coffee shop in her neighborhood, and the moment I saw her, I understood why the Martinez family had targeted her. She had the same trusting eyes I used to see in my own mirror, the same eagerness to please that I'd brought to every family dinner. "I knew this day would come," Amanda said, stirring her latte with shaking hands. "I always wondered if they'd do it again to someone else." "Tell me everything," I said, pulling out my phone to record with her permission. "Sarah needs witness testimony to strengthen the case." Amanda's story was heartbreakingly familiar. The gradual exclusion from family conversations, the mysterious emergencies that required immediate financial help, the guilt trips when she asked questions, the way David had promised the money would be returned with interest that never materialized. "They took $12,000 from me," she said, tears welling up, "money I'd saved for nursing school. When I finally demanded it back, Patricia told David I was being selfish and materialistic. 2 weeks later, David broke up with me, saying I didn't understand family loyalty." "Did you ever get your money back?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She shook her head. "I was so heartbroken about losing David that I didn't even think about pursuing the money legally. I just wanted to move on and forget the whole family existed." She looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. "But you're going to fight back, aren't you?" "I'm going to destroy them," I said quietly. "Legally, systematically, completely. They're going to learn that some people don't just disappear quietly when they're robbed." Amanda reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Count me in. I'll testify. I'll provide whatever documentation I still have. It's time someone held them accountable." That afternoon, I opened a new bank account at a different bank entirely, transferring what little money remained from our joint account into my name only. Then I did something that felt like shedding an old skin. I went to the courthouse and filed for legal separation from David. But I wasn't done gathering intelligence. That evening, I played the role of my life. When David came home, I was cooking his favorite dinner, beef bourguignon, the recipe Patricia had taught me during my first year in the family. I greeted him with a kiss, asked about his day, and acted like nothing had changed. "Becca, about yesterday," he started, but I cut him off with a gentle smile. "David, I've been thinking all day," I said, ladling the rich stew into his bowl. "You're right. Family comes first, and I was being selfish about the money. If Patricia needs help, then of course we should help her. The relief on his face was so profound it was almost comical. Really? You mean that? I love you, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. And I love your family. We're all in this together, right? I sat down across from him, placing my phone strategically to record our conversation. Tell me more about this investment opportunity. I want to understand how we can help. David spent the next hour explaining the investment, a real estate venture that Patricia was supposedly spearheading. According to him, she needed quick capital to secure a property that would triple our money within 6 months. James had already contributed his savings, and Robert had cashed out some retirement funds. Everything he told me was a lie, and I knew it because I'd seen James's gambling debts in those emails. But I nodded and asked thoughtful questions, recording every fabrication for Sarah's case file. There might be another opportunity coming up soon, David said, relaxing as he believed my performance. Mom thinks we could potentially invest another $20,000 if this first deal goes well. $20,000 more? I kept my voice curious rather than horrified. Where would we get that kind of money? Well, you got that bonus last month, and if we're careful with our budget— He trailed off, realizing he was essentially planning to steal my future earnings too. That night, after David fell asleep believing his wife had been successfully manipulated back into compliance, I forwarded the recording to Sarah and began phase 2 of my plan. I spent the following weeks playing the perfect daughter-in-law while systematically documenting every aspect of their criminal enterprise. I attended family dinners and smiled while Patricia discussed her investment progress. I listened to James's stories about his legal victories while knowing he was drowning in gambling debts. I hugged Robert goodbye each Sunday while building the case that would send him to prison. During one particularly enlightening dinner, Patricia mentioned that the investment property would need another injection of funds soon. How much? I asked innocently, passing the mashed potatoes. Oh, not too much, Patricia said with that practiced smile. Maybe another 15 or 20,000. Just temporary, of course. James nodded seriously. These opportunities move fast in real estate. You have to be ready to act when the moment comes. I excused myself to use the bathroom and immediately texted Sarah. They're planning to take another $20,000. We need to move faster. Her response came within minutes. Asset freeze approved. Criminal charges filed tomorrow. Are you ready? I looked at myself in Patricia's perfectly decorated guest bathroom mirror, seeing a stranger who had learned to lie as smoothly as the people who'd betrayed her. Ready, I texted back. But I wasn't just ready for legal action. I was ready to watch their entire world crumble, piece by piece, exactly the way they'd dismantled mine. The next morning started like any other Tuesday, except I knew it would be the last normal day the Martinez family would ever have. David left for work with a kiss and a promise to pick up dinner on his way home. Patricia was scheduled for a double shift at the hospital. James had court appearances all day. Robert was playing golf with his retirement buddies. They had no idea that while they were going about their normal routines, police officers were preparing arrest warrants, prosecutors were reviewing evidence, and their bank accounts were being frozen by court order. At 10:47 a.m., Sarah called me. It's done, Rebecca. The charges are filed, the assets are frozen, and the arrests will begin this afternoon. Are you somewhere safe? I was sitting in my car outside David's office building, watching him through the window as he chatted with colleagues who had no idea they were looking at a man whose life was about to implode. I'm exactly where I need to be, I told Sarah. The first call came at 11:15. David's phone rang and I watched his expression change from mild curiosity to confusion to absolute terror as he spoke to whoever was on the line. He hung up and immediately started dialing frantically, his movements becoming more desperate with each call. I knew he was trying to reach his family, trying to understand why their bank accounts were suddenly inaccessible, why Patricia had been escorted out of the hospital by security, why James's law firm was asking urgent questions about his client trust fund management. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Emergency, coming home now. Something's wrong with family accounts. I drove home slowly, savoring every moment of anticipation. When I arrived, David was already there, pacing our living room with his phone pressed to his ear. His hair was disheveled, his tie loosened, and sweat stained his shirt despite the cool weather. "Becca, thank God you're here," he said, ending yet another unsuccessful call. "Something's happened. All our accounts are frozen. Mom's been suspended from work. James can't access his trust fund. It's like someone's attacking our family financially." I set down my purse and looked at him with the calm expression I'd been practicing in my car mirror. "That's terrible, David. Do you have any idea why this might be happening?" "No, none of us can figure it out. The bank says there's some kind of legal hold, but they won't tell us anything specific." His desperation was palpable. "I'm scared, Becca. What if we lose everything?" "Well," I said, settling into my favorite armchair, "maybe it has something to do with the $47,000 you stole from our joint account." The silence in the room was absolute. David froze mid-pace, his phone still clutched in his hand, staring at me like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. "What did you say?" he whispered. "You heard me." I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app. "David Martinez, you and your family are being investigated for financial fraud, conspiracy to commit theft, and organized criminal activity. The police will be here to arrest you shortly." His face went through a remarkable transformation: confusion, denial, recognition, and finally, rage. "You did this? You called the police on your own husband? On my family?" "I called the police on criminals who happened to be my husband and his family," I corrected. "There's a difference." David slammed his phone down so hard it cracked the screen. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've destroyed everything. Our marriage, my family, my career, everything." "I didn't destroy anything, David. You did that when you decided to rob me blind." I stood up, suddenly feeling taller than I had in months. "You destroyed our marriage when you chose your family's criminal enterprise over honesty with your wife. You destroyed your career when you committed felonies. I just made sure you faced the consequences." The doorbell rang, and through our front window I could see 2 police officers standing on our porch. David saw them too, and the last bit of color drained from his face. "Becca, please," he begged, his voice breaking. "Don't let them arrest me. We can fix this. I'll get the money back, I promise. Just call them off." I walked to the front door, my hand on the handle. "You know what you should have said to me 3 weeks ago, David? You should have said, 'Becca, my family is in serious financial trouble, and they're asking us for help. What do you think we should do?' That's what a real husband would have done." I opened the door and Officer Martinez, ironically sharing David's last name, stepped forward. "Mrs. Martinez, we have a warrant for the arrest of David Martinez." "He's right here," I said, stepping aside. As they read David his rights and placed him in handcuffs, he looked at me with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. "This isn't over, Rebecca. Family doesn't turn on family." I smiled at him, the same practiced smile Patricia had perfected over the years. "You're absolutely right, David. Family doesn't turn on family. Too bad you forgot I was supposed to be family too." But watching David get arrested was just the beginning of their downfall, and what happened next proved that sometimes the best revenge is simply letting criminals face justice. Over the following weeks, I watched the Martinez family empire crumble with the systematic precision of a controlled demolition. Patricia was fired from the hospital pending investigation, her medical license under review for the financial irregularities that had begun surfacing in her department's budget. James was suspended from practicing law, while the state bar examined allegations of client fund mismanagement. Robert's retirement accounts were frozen, leaving him unable to pay for the country club memberships and golf tournaments that had defined his golden years. The local newspaper picked up the story. Prominent family charged in multi-victim financial fraud scheme. The article detailed how the Martinez family had been running what prosecutors called a romance-based confidence game for over a decade, targeting women who married into or dated into the family. Sarah had done her homework thoroughly. During the investigation, 2 more victims had come forward, women I'd never heard of who had been convinced to loan money to various Martinez family emergencies over the years. The total amount stolen from all victims exceeded $200,000. But the most satisfying part wasn't the criminal charges or the public humiliation. It was the phone call I received from Patricia 3 weeks after the arrests. "Rebecca?" Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it, stripped of the commanding authority she'd wielded at every family dinner. "I need to speak with you." "About what, Patricia?" I asked, standing in my new apartment, a bright, airy space I'd rented with the money I'd recovered from their frozen accounts. "I want you to know. I want you to understand that we never meant for things to go this far." She was crying, something I'd never seen her do even at funerals. "We just needed help, and you seemed so generous, so willing to be part of the family." "So willing to be your victim, you mean? That's not... We didn't think of it that way." Her voice cracked. "David loves you, he really does. This whole situation just got out of hand." Oh, I looked out my apartment window at the city skyline, feeling genuinely free for the first time in months. "Patricia, do you know what the worst part was? It wasn't the money. I could have gotten over losing the money. Then what? It was sitting at your dinner table every Sunday cooking meals for people who saw me as a mark to be exploited. It was believing I had a family when I was actually just another business transaction." I paused, letting that sink in. "You taught me something valuable, though." "What's that?" "I learned that I'm much stronger than any of you ever imagined. And I learned that justice feels better than any family dinner ever did." After I hung up, I opened my laptop and began typing a blog post that would eventually become a book, How I Survived Financial Abuse and Why Silence Never Protects the Victim. 6 months later, David was sentenced to 3 years in prison. James lost his law license and received 5 years. Patricia was sentenced to 4 years and permanent revocation of her medical license. Robert, as the oldest and deemed the mastermind of the family operation, received 7 years. Amanda and I became close friends, bonding over our shared experience and our mutual commitment to helping other women recognize financial abuse before it destroyed their lives. Together, we started a support group that met monthly in the community center downtown. "You know what's funny?" Amanda said during one of our meetings, addressing a room of 15 women who had all experienced some form of financial manipulation. They thought our trusting nature made us easy targets. They never considered that the same qualities that made us vulnerable also made us incredibly resourceful when we finally decided to fight back. The woman next to her, Maria, nodded emphatically. "My ex-husband used to say I was too emotional to understand finances. Turned out I understood them well enough to document his embezzlement and get him convicted." As I looked around that room full of survivors who had transformed their pain into power, I realized something profound. The Martinez family had tried to break me, but instead they had revealed strength I didn't know I possessed. They had tried to isolate me, but instead they had connected me to a community of women who refused to be victims. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Rebecca, I just got word that your victim impact statement influenced the judge's sentencing decision. Your words helped ensure justice was served." I smiled, remembering the last thing I'd said to David before he was led away to begin his prison sentence. "You told your family I was too trusting to question family decisions. You were wrong. I was just trusting enough to give you the rope to hang yourselves with." That night, I cooked dinner for one in my bright kitchen, using recipes I'd learned from my own mother rather than Patricia's elaborate performances. As I ate, I reflected on how much my life had changed since that terrible day at the ATM. I had lost a marriage but gained my self-respect. I had lost money but gained the knowledge that I could survive anything. I had lost a family, but found a community of survivors who had become closer than any blood relation. Most importantly, I had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for future victims, is to refuse to stay silent when people mistake your kindness for weakness. The Martinez family had taught me that privacy should never be used to hide crime, that family doesn't give anyone the right to steal, and that sometimes your silence enables their abuse. They probably thought they were teaching me to be grateful for their inclusion, but instead they taught me something far more valuable: how to include myself in my own life, how to trust my own instincts, and how to fight back when people try to exploit your love. And that education, painful as it was, turned out to be worth far more than the $47,000 they stole.